Hello and welcome to my devlog about finishing my first game, CreepWars TD. Before we jump into the actual devlog, let's start with an introduction. I am a German engineer and part-time video game developer. In 2019 I started to experiment with Unity and programmed prototypes for different types of games, following several tutorials. During this time I also started to mess around with asset packs from the Unity asset store. While thinking about which kind of games I want to build, I remembered that I really loved playing custom tower defense maps in Warcraft 3 and other strategy games. So quickly the idea formed that I want to make my own tower defense game in that spirit. I picked up some asset packs from the asset store and started building a game, but soon I realized that the templates don't fit my expectations. On the other hand, my skill set was not yet that advanced that I could build my own template. So I thought, why not to start with a real-time strategy template which offers much more functions than I need, and then modify it to a tower defense game. In my mind that was a similar approach like creating tower defense mods for great titles like Warcraft 3 or Dota 2. Nevertheless, this approach still seemed to be very programming heavy, but it would also give me insights in how to create an actual RTS game. It finally took some time to bring my first thoughts into a solid concept. To be precise, at the Christmas holidays in 2019, I decided to really build a game. I also wanted to release it on Steam in 2020 to push myself by constantly having to improve my overall game dev skills, including registering business and all of that other fun stuff. So I set the starting date for the development of CreepWars TD to January 1st, 2020. With this decision being made, in the first month I implemented all basic tower defense systems into the real-time strategy game template I had chosen. The first target was to implement a modular wave spawner and the waypoint system. Both systems were heavily inspired by the tower defense series from Brackies on YouTube. But as I had the template on hand, I surely tried to use as much of it as possible to save time. For example, I created a waypoint system which is based on the already existing pathfinding. With those systems ready, I started to work on a playable demo. I decided to use 3D models from the asset store as a starting point, because otherwise the project would have gone beyond my skill level at that time. So I bought a generic TD character set and additionally some environmental models and built the first playable demo. The feedback I got from my friends who played the demo was good, and I had a lot of suggested improvements to implement. If you want to try it, I have put a link to the demo in the video description. The style of the game was very cartoony and casual. This art style seemed sufficient, but while thinking about the corner points of a good TD, I stumbled across the fact that my gameplay loop would consist a lot of observation time. This means the player would just watch the towers fight for probably 80% of the time. So I wanted to create a more immersive and nice to look at scenery. To get inspiration for that, I revisited my favorite mods and I also purchased some standalone TDs. For me, the stylized look of Dota 2 and World of Warcraft appeared to be a good choice between a cartoony and a realistic art style, so to say. So I searched the asset store for coherent 3D models to reskin the game. It took a while and I wasted some money, but I finally got a set of assets to build an alpha version. By June 2020 I had it ready and showed it to the same friends as the previous version to get even more feedback. After implementing most of their suggestions and removing a ton of bugs, I thought the project had progressed far enough to be considered an early access version on Steam. So I set the early access date for August 2020. During the preparation phase, I worked hard on removing all bugs and balancing creeps and towers. At first it went pretty good. Nevertheless, I realized that I would need more dev time to get the game out in August. So I took a vacation from my day job to be able to implement the scope I announced on Steam for the game. I had everything together in the last week of August, but unfortunately I uploaded the wrong build to be checked by Steam. It missed one level I had announced, and so I did not pass the quality check by Steam. Launching in August was not any longer possible. So the release had to be postponed to September 2nd. Despite the fact that this caused some negative comments, the general feedback was very good and the game sold much better than I had expected. Of course, on a very low level. I had expected 0 sales. Probably the game would have performed even better if it had been more polished. But I was very happy with the outcome. Overall, I sold over 100 copies of the game during the first 2 months. In October 2020 I started to replace modifying board assets. One big thing I wanted to change was to make the world more alive, because trees and the other environment assets were very static. So I thought about top-down games with a memorable environment. The gorgeous scenery of Dota 2 was the first thing that came to my mind, so I logged in and played some rounds. I realized that the trees made up a big portion of the map, so I thought about how to recreate the look of the trees and the environment in Unity. The outcome was satisfying, so I decided to replace all trees. Unfortunately, I did not work properly with prefabs, so a lot of the scenes had to be reworked. With this, I decided to also align the terrain with textures and overhaul the general look of the environment. Since then, I have been working constantly on removing bugs, balancing the gameplay and improving the overall feel of the game. Unfortunately, in March 2021 my SSD crashed and I was not as consistent with backups as I should have been. So I lost a ton of progress and was very discouraged. At this point I thought about dumping the project. It took me some weeks to rebuild the lost progress, and after that the overall development speed came down heavily. But then I got really good feedback from people who actually played the game a lot, and more YouTube videos featuring the game appeared. So I decided to finish the game. I knew that I had to put some systems in place to support that. At this time, a developer friend offered me to use his Git server for project management. Since then I kept track of all issues and grouped them in updates. The last major milestone were the release of a demo version and one big update end of last year. Next thing is to overhaul the UI and get everything ready for release. The plan is now to release in 8 weeks, which will be mid of April. I want to get all the issues resolved within 4 weeks, and then for the last period just fix new bugs which appear and do marketing activities. This is it for the introduction of my game CreepWars TD. Thank you very much for watching, and please feel free to write feedback in the comment section. Bye.